friends, it's Michael from One Sky, here with another astrology video. Today we're going to take a look at Virgo A, the smoking gun, also known as Messier 87, shortened to M87. This is a distant galaxy. It's a galaxy that's about 53 million light years away. Before I get into some of the astronomy and the astrology around Virgo A, what it is, what it seems to represent, I want to say this information is going to be hopefully useful to practitioners of all kinds of astrology. It's going to be useful to practitioners of Sidereal Astrology in the Vedic and Western traditions. It's going to be useful to practitioners of tropical astrology. I myself practice astronomical or constellational, known as true sidereal astrology, which uses the precise size and location of the constellations instead of an even sign zodiac. It does change things, and when we get into the chart work, the case studies of Virgo A, M87, in really activated in people's charts, some famous people we're going to look at later in the video, you're going to see that all the constellations are a different size. This changes things, so for more information about that, check out True Sidereal Astrology. 13 sign astrology is another name it goes by, so I encourage you to educate yourself about this exciting branch, this newly emerging and anciently rooted branch of astrological practice. For now, I want to jump right into the program Stellarium. This is a free and open source software, so you can download this for your operating system, whatever it is. You'll see here that Virgo Galaxy, Virgo A, the smoking gun, or as I'm going to call it for the rest of this video, M87. You'll see here that M87 is in the Virgo constellation, that we have the ecliptic band here, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, and about 1/5 of the way in, about 10 degrees in and 12 degrees north of the ecliptic, you find M87. It's a very distant galaxy, and you can see right here when I get very close to it, you can see these two lights are not distant stars, but are actually a really interesting formation of this galaxy that we're going to look at later in the video. Basically, that's the reason it's called the smoking gun. M87 is 53 million light years away, which means that if you got on a photon traveling at 186,000 miles per second, it would take you 53 million years to get to Earth from M87. So this is a distant point, but it's actually the point around which our Milky Way galaxy orbits. It holds a large number of galaxies in its orbit because it's a behemoth galaxy with an absolutely massive, supermassive black hole at the center of it. One which dwarfs Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, by about 3 orders of magnitude. It's something we're going to also look at later in the video. This supermassive black hole made some headlines recently as the first black hole to be photographed. So we have visual imagery from the inside of the event horizon of a black hole. This was the famous picture the first black hole ever photographed, and it was M87 because it's such a massive and powerful, such an available body to photograph even at that distance. Now M87 has a solar mass measurement of 7 trillion solar masses, compared to Sagittarius A star, our own local supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which only has a solar mass count of 4 million. So, even at 53 million miles away, we are held in an orbit. We're held in rotation around this body. This is really one of the largest supermassive black holes we know of, one of the largest scale galaxies we know of. It's talked about in terms of being a behemoth galaxy, and of course Sagittarius A star is a supermassive black hole at 4 million solar masses. So, again, we see three orders of magnitude added, and 7 trillion solar masses measured, and those are approximate, but they're accurate to within a close enough degree that they aren't widely disputed. Every second of time that we measure, we see M87 star, the supermassive black hole at the middle of galaxy M87. We see it emitting about 1,000 times the energy of our sun, and that output is occurring every second. So 1,000 times the energy is put out. And this is one of the reasons that the galaxy is called the smoking gun, because as you zoom in and you start to get close to it, you see this sort of jet. It looks smoky. We get a little bit better picture here. What we have here is actually a jet of plasma that is emitted from the complex area around M87 star. And so it's an ellipsoidal galaxy. It has a sort of a disk shape, and it's emitted, this jet of plasma is emitted perpendicular. So in the vortex of energy, in the swirling gases around in the swirling gases in proximity to M87 star, we have generated such force that these gases are sped up and shot out, it seems, at close to the speed of light, creating a sort of a stream, a beam of plasma. And this beam of plasma travels for 4,000, about almost 5,000 light years, 4,900. And that's absolutely rare and unique in the known universe. This is the formation, this beam, that the galaxy gets its name, its nickname, the smoking gun, from. So now to get to the astrology, because that's the basic astronomy of M87. That's kind of what we have here. I want to say that in a lot of the information that's out there, I had to do some checking, I had to do some deeper digging, and tropical astrology plots this point in early Libra. I think at about, depends on where you look, maybe 1 Libra, 42 minutes, 1 degree, 42 minutes of the sign of tropical Libra. So if you look, you'll find information about the Galactic Center that's floating around, and it'll tell you that because it's in Libra, it relates to relationships, one-on-one relationships. Because we're dealing with a supermassive black hole, there's some information that I found in a couple places about people being vacuums in relationship, just taking and never giving, and they had this point activated in their chart. I think this might be fanciful, although I would never argue with anyone's experience. If they want to draw that correlation, that's fine with me. But I'm not going to reproduce that information here, because I do find it a little bit of an artistic interpretation. I've also seen an interpretation associating it with source energy. And that might make a little more sense, because this is the SuperGalactic Center. This is what our galaxy orbits around. So that's not an amazing logical leap to make, that it's associated with source energy. I don't find any reasons or supporting data for that, and furthermore, I'm lacking a working definition of what source energy is. Depends on who you talk to, it seems. If I look into what is source energy and I ask a Reiki person, they'll tell me it's universal healing energy. If I ask a mystical Christian, they'll tell me it's God's love. If I ask a quantum physicist, they might say, well, that's the 0-point energy field. And with all due respect to all those points of view and many more that I encountered in my studies, I don't find any strong correlation for that idea that the M87 galaxy is relating to source energy. So I got very interested in this, and what I'm going to end up doing is looking at a bunch of famous people's charts. I think 6 or 7 I have today. We're going to look at some charts in which the point, in which that point is very activated on an angle, conjoined a sun or moon or a major body in a widely known, famous even in almost every case, person's chart. And we can gather more information like this than we can with artistic or fanciful interpretations, in my humble opinion. So that's the way I want to present this. So let's check out the first chart. This is the chart of the very widely known author Agatha Christie. You'll see that her moon on the second house cusp is within 2 degrees. That's what I gave this as an orb of influence when I started doing this field work, looking through charts. You'll see in Agatha Christie's chart, her moon is within 2 degrees, precisely conjoined to the SuperGalactic Center. And also of note, you'll see that she was born in the time of the Pluto-Neptune conjunction. They were almost within 1 degree of each other, just approaching 1 degree of orb, and that trine is grand trined, completed there by Jupiter. So with this moon, we have a lot more going on than just M87 in the vicinity. There's always a lot more going on. And even in charts where we can more so isolate the influence of M87, I want to say that it's always foolish to isolate one aspect of a chart. With that in mind, I just want to give a little background. Most people know Agatha Christie, but I don't want to make any assumptions. She's the best-selling novelist of all time. She's the third most published author behind Shakespeare and the Bible. So third most published body of works is her corpus behind Shakespeare and the Bible. She's been translated into 103 languages, and there's more than 30 feature films based on her work. I would say she was widely successful. In terms of her moon, digging into the details of her personal life, I found out that she was the product of a self-described, very happy childhood. She was surrounded by strong and independent women from an early age, and she was raised in a very esoteric household where the mother was considered psychic by the family, known to have the second sight and insight, nonlinear insight into things. Agatha Christie was homeschooled by that mother, and by both her parents, actually, but she had a very close relationship to the mother. And I think that's interesting. I think if you want to examine this chart, you will find supporting reasons for that have nothing to do with the SuperGalactic Center, with M87. But I do want to make note of that moon in its position was, thus empowered. To move on, I want to take a look at a second chart. Here we have the chart of another famous author. And this is the beginning of a pattern that we're going to more or less see throughout, one of exceptional creativity. Without saying too much about that, H.G. Wells had an 8th house sun, which was also within 2 degrees of M87, the SuperGalactic Center. Now, H.G. Wells is most known for his novels, The Time Machine, The Invisible Man, War of the Worlds, Island of Dr. Moreau. He was, by all accounts, a prophetic, a futuristic writer who challenged the status quo. He was prolific in many genres, actually writing several, I would say many works that most people have never heard of, including biographic and autobiographic works. He's considered the grandfather of sci-fi, and that's a mouthful. The grandfather of sci-fi. During his own lifetime, however, he was most prominent as a forward-looking social critic who developed his own literary talents along the alignment with a progressive vision on a global scale. So, again, looking into this chart, you'll find a lot of reasons for an amazing life. You'll find a lot of reasons for visionary insight. But it is the case that his sun was conjoined to the SuperGalactic Center. In the interest of time, I want to move on. I really don't want to spend a lot of time analyzing charts here. What I want to do is paint a little bit broader picture, because you'll see this theme of creativity, of otherworldly or other dimensional insight from out of time and place maybe, continue with Jim Henson. And Jim Henson has his sun in the 3rd house, almost precisely. We're within 8 arc minutes of exactitude here, with the sun precisely conjoined to the SuperGalactic Center. So the second sun, H.G. Wells, 8th house sun, Jim Henson, 3rd house sun. Jim Henson, for people who don't know, have maybe been living under a rock. No, don't take me wrong. I grew up with Jim Henson, so he's very close to my heart. But maybe hopefully you've been under Fraggle Rock. You may know Jim Henson from his work with the Muppets or Sesame Street, The Dark Crystal, the movie Labyrinth. Jim Henson Creature Shop has been involved in incredibly wonderful projects, and he won an Emmy for his work on a series called The Storyteller, which is actually some of his finest and my favorite work of his. I highly recommend you dig that up from the archives and check out The Storyteller for those of you who appreciate Jim Henson. Yeah, again, without getting too deep into chart work, I just want to say this guy's sun was right on the SuperGalactic Center, right on that point. So we see a continuation with the accentuated creativity. Accentuated creativity. Up next, we'll take a look at someone who I imagine you also know, probably by last name only, JRR Tolkien, with a first house Saturn placement, conjoined closely to within half a degree of the SGC M87. And, Saturn in the first house is having to do often with structure, with discipline, with a kind of more severe personality, more conservative personality. In J.R.R. Tolkien's case, he, like Agatha Christie, was born with the Neptune-Pluto conjunction at the zenith of the chart. And this isn't forming a grand trine in his case like it was in Agatha Christie's, but it is trine to Venus, and it is trine to his Saturn in the first house. Tolkien is best known for his work as the author of The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. He's considered the father of high fantasy. That's another mouthful. I mean, this coming from other authors and the literary scene in general. He served, and this is in regard to Saturn in the first house, he served as the Rawlinson and Bosworth Professor of Anglo-Saxon and a Fellow of Pembroke College, Oxford, from 1925 to 1945. He was the Merton Professor of English Language and Literature and a Fellow of Merton College, Oxford, from 1945, when his tenure there at Pembroke was over, to 1959. This is a very disciplined and institutional curriculum vitae. Tolkien was appointed a Commander of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, and during World War I he served in the British military, albeit reluctantly. Now, without trying to spend too much time, I just want to bring out some of the details of the lives as they relate, especially to the placements. And with Saturn there in the first house, it doesn't necessarily speak volumes to me about authorship, but in his private life, or I should say his personal life, in his service to Oxford College and those institutions and to the British Empire, we do see very pronounced Saturn placement, very pronounced Saturn expression, I should say. Moving onward, I want to take a look at another Saturn placement, and this is a first and second house cusp Saturn, also, of course, in conjunction with M87, the SuperGalactic Center. Henry Ford was an American industrialist. He was a business magnate. He was the founder of Ford Motor Company and the sponsor of the development of the assembly line technique. He's widely credited with inventing it, but that's actually not factual. He only popularized it by giving it his support as the owner of Ford Motor Company. He's credited with Fordism. He's got an ism named after him. That's significant. When you see Saturn and you understand it as structure, for someone to have a system of structure or an ism named after them, this is highly indicative of very activated Saturn. And in the chart, Saturn is very activated. It's opposite in close opposition to Neptune, and you see some of the when you get Saturn and Neptune together, you do see bridging the fantastic, the idea world, the dream world, with the practical, the applicable, the real world, grounded, pragmatic stuff. And you see that in the assembly line. You have to think about ways to make things easier, to do things with less. There's a quality of insight there that Neptune in Pisces absolutely speaks to. So I'm not crediting all of Ford's Saturnian expression with this, but it is very interesting that he did develop this ism. And Fordism was marked by mass production of inexpensive goods, coupled with high wages for workers. And interestingly, Ford operated too out of a global vision. Ford had a wide-ranging global vision, with consumerism as a key to peace. That's all I want to say about Henry Ford. Moving on, we have George Lucas. And George Lucas had Neptune conjoined closely to within half a degree to M87, the SuperGalactic Center. George Lucas, also just one of those names that I don't think there are many people in today's world I need to explain this to. But for those who aren't familiar, he's famous for Star Wars, the 9-part epic saga and all its spin-offs. Indiana Jones, he founded DreamWorks, Lucasfilm, spawned Pixar. He produced movies for Akira Kurosawa, Jim Henson, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, Godfrey Reggio of the Quatsi trilogy, and other fantastic work. Reggio, one of my favorites. George Lucas was an American filmmaker, a philanthropist, and an entrepreneur. And the philanthropy is really interesting because Neptune on the SuperGalactic Center, if we're looking at the life of George Lucas, it's interesting. He founded DreamWorks, Neptune, but really the qualities of Neptune are very generous, very, very spiritual, very, very transpersonal. Neptune as a higher octave of Venus is really where we see broad generosity and forgiveness, and or I should say one of the places where we see that. And George Lucas has pledged to give half of his fortune to charity as part of an effort called the Giving Pledge. This is led by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And George Lucas was in on that, giving half of his riches to charity. That's exemplary generosity. That's above and beyond. That's like, that's a very interesting expression of Neptunian energy. Moving on to our last chart, we kind of complete the scene here with another creative, visionary, futuristic, to the point of being prophetic, virtuoso. Just another creative par excellence, Philip K. Dick has the SuperGalactic Center very closely conjoined to the descendant. And the descendant in a chart is, in my experience, really the persona. It's really the mask that we wear naturally to make our way through life. And I want to say that a lot of people would say, no, the ascendant is the persona, the role we play, and so on. But the ascendant is the qualities that are increasing in the life and that are driving the evolution forward. So there may be qualities of the ascendant that as we age become our role, the role that the actor within is playing, the mask that we put on for the public, and so on. But the descendant is really the very ingrained natural persona. In my experience, much more than the ascendant, where the descendant describes the innate and indwelling, very natural qualities. The ascendant is describing the forces that drive the life forward, the qualities that will increase during the course of the life, and is different than the persona per se. You can take the descendant any way you interpret it that works for you, of course. I'm just giving a little background, little context about how I read this position. Because in Philip K. Dick's case, he always wrote. He started his publishing at 22. He was first published, which is, well done, Philip. His work was always exploring questions around the nature of reality, the nature of perception, of human nature, of identity. Some of his work, now many people may not be familiar with Philip K. Dick. I want to say Electric Dreams was running on Amazon Prime. You can stream Electric Dreams. It's a series, a very well done series, taking as its primary basis Dick's short stories. So each episode is a standalone, delightful series. I do recommend it. Dick won a Hugo Award for The Man in the High Castle, which is another popular TV series these days, streaming. He wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That became the primary basis for Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. He wrote A Scanner Darkly, Valis, Minority Report, Total Recall. The important thing here is that this futuristic and such progressive expression definitely hallmarked here by Uranus on the ascendant, and Eris too, reflecting the kind of work ethic that it takes to begin being published, doing the kind of writing that Dick was doing, to be published at 22 and to gain incredible renown. And he's one of the most honored authors in literary circles in the genre of sci-fi. He's nearly synonymous. And when you think of sci-fi, you think of like William Gibson, Philip K. Dick, Neil Stephenson. There's just a handful of other names, Isaac Asimov, people that really just carved their own way with their own creativity. Without going on and on, you do see in Dick's chart, you do see the SuperGalactic Center, M87, trine up to Venus. That is with Venus's connection with fine arts in the 11th house, very futuristic. And again, Uranus on the ascendant, remarkably futuristic in visionary Pisces. No problem seeing that with a stellium around the galactic center, including the sun Mercury and Saturn, that again with the aforementioned Eris and its strong hustle on the ascendant, this is someone who is really, born and capable of doing that work for a lot of reasons. And I'm not trying to isolate the any factor of any chart here, but I do find it interesting. I looked through hundreds of charts, and the ones that really stood out where the SuperGalactic Center was activated all were indicative of an extremely innovative, creative influence. Even Ford was an innovator and a creator within the context of his industry. But every other name on this list has been a major, not just an artist, but an epic storyteller. There's a flavor here. There's a flavor of genius and insight into human nature. There's a connection to other worlds. There's a connection to the strange and the fantastic. There's a connection to story, to the human story, in all of its times and places and stages of maturity, in all of its expression. There's intense literary expression here, and just a connection, it seems, to words, and most prominently story and stories. And with that said, I want to offer that in my findings, the M87 point here has more to do with story and storytelling on a galactic, even a universal and a cosmic scale than it does with being a vacuum cleaner in relationships. And your mileage may vary, as they say, but those are the findings that I wanted to share with you, having done my due diligence and looked through as many charts as I could for the activation of M87, the SuperGalactic Center. I want to take a further minute for those of my tribe who are using Capricorn Prometheus, and I want to say to you that I want to show you how to add the SuperGalactic Center to a chart at this point. 9 Virgo, 9 degrees of Virgo, 33 minutes. So going into your primary points, let's just go in here and say I'm going to take a primary points. Say we'll take the primary points of the 7 planets. Any point configuration file that you want to edit, just open it up, go to add point here at the bottom, and by open it up I mean edit it. So click edit and then add that point of zodiac position, and Capricorn Prometheus is going to orient this point to even sign sidereal zodiac. So you don't want to enter 9 Virgo 33, but I believe what you want to enter is 00 VIR 48, and then you click select the zodiac position and OK, and now you will have this point as a zodiac position, 0 degrees Virgo, 48 minutes. I'm going to delete that because I just wanted to show you how to do it. I'm going to cancel out of here. In my default points, I do have it here, 0 degrees Virgo 48. And when you plot that as a zodiac position, it will come up in a true sidereal chart at 9 degrees of constellation Virgo, 33 arc minutes. So I did run this past some folks, including Agatha Christie, who concurred that that's an accurate way to do it. The way I arrived at that conclusion was not looking it up, because I found broad and mistaken data about the placement of M87. The way I came to this conclusion was charting, I believe, ecliptic longitude, which you'll see here is listed as 182.2961, which I'm going to call 182 and a third. And running that through the data that's generated by Stellarium. And when we look at ecliptic longitude on today's date, we find it at 182 degrees 20 minutes. Now there are 60 minutes in a degree, so 182 degrees and 20 minutes is precisely 182 and a third. So using ecliptic longitude and Stellarium to find my way through trial and error, orienting these points on a true sidereal chart, I've found that that is the way to do it in Capricorn Prometheus. 0 degrees Virgo 48 arc minutes will yield you, in the true sidereal expression, the exact point of M87, the SuperGalactic Center. If you have stayed and watched this much, I thank you. I hope it is because you're using Capricorn Prometheus and practicing true sidereal astrology, but if it's not, I love you anyway. And I hope to see you soon for another video. I'll see you for the next lunar cycle video with this new moon coming up in Aquarius shortly. Till then, my friends, thank you for watching, as always, and goodbye.